In a sealed glass case at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, a scroll fragment the size of a business card contains 8 lines of Aramaic text describing a hole in the earth with fire rising from it, and a gate that cannot be opened from the outside. In 364 CE, church leaders voted the Book of Enoch out of Scripture and called it dangerous. For 17 centuries, it disappeared from Western Christianity. Then in 1947, 11 copies surfaced in the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, more manuscripts than were found of most books still in the Bible today. Scholars who translated the oldest fragments found something that no ancient text should contain. Enoch does not describe a spiritual underworld. He describes a physical location. He gives compass directions. He names the terrain. He records what the entrance looks like from the outside. And the location he specifies, a geological formation in the Judean wilderness east of the Dead Sea, exists. It is real. It is documented. And access to its interior has been restricted since 1967. In the next several minutes, you will see what Enoch wrote, where the entrance is, and what the restricted surveys found when instruments were pointed at what lies beneath it. If forbidden biblical history fascinates you, hit subscribe. Every week we uncover what was removed from Scripture. But here's what makes this stranger. The passage appears across chapters 17 through 22 of Enoch, in the section scholars call the Book of the Watchers. Fragment 4Q206, stored at the Israel Museum's Shrine of the Book, contains Aramaic text from chapter 17, dated to around 100 BCE. The complete version exists in Ge'ez manuscripts at the Ethiopian Orthodox Monastery in Aksum. Dr. Michael Neeb, who produced the standard Oxford translation in 1978, identified these chapters as containing what he called geographical language inconsistent with symbolic literature. He meant Enoch uses compass directions. He uses measurable distances. He describes terrain features that can be cross-referenced against real geology. Dr. George Nicholsberg, who published the definitive scholarly commentary on 1 Enoch for Fortress Press in 2001, called chapter 22 specifically the most geographically precise description of a subterranean location in any pre-Christian Jewish text. Not symbolic, not spiritual, geographically precise. And this is where it gets disturbing. Enoch is not describing a vision. He writes in first person, past tense, using the same direct observational language he uses for terrain he walked through on the surface. Chapter 17 begins, "And they took me to a place where those who were there were like burning fire, and when they wished they appeared as men." He is describing beings he observed. Then in verse 5 he writes that he was taken to a place beyond the Great Sea toward the west, west of the Dead Sea, toward the wilderness. The direction is specific. The landmark is real. The Dead Sea sits in the Jordan Valley. West of it is Jerusalem. East of it is the Judean wilderness, a region of limestone cliffs, deep wadis, and geological formations unlike anywhere else on the planet. Enoch's entrance is in that region, and he describes it with the same matter-of-fact precision you'd use giving someone directions to a trailhead. What we're looking at is a 4-part description of the entrance and what lies beyond it. The text begins with the approach. Chapter 17, verse 6 describes a place of terrible darkness where no light entered from above. Enoch writes that the ground beneath his feet was smooth stone, cold to the touch, not like any stone found on land. Cold, smooth, dark stone. The ocean floor is paved in basalt, volcanic rock that forms smooth, dark, cold surfaces. The Dead Sea region sits above an ancient volcanic rift. The Jordan Valley is the northern extension of the African Rift System, one of the deepest geological features on the planet. The rock beneath the Judean wilderness east of the Dead Sea is exactly what Enoch describes. Smooth, dark, basaltic stone of volcanic origin, cold even in summer because it sits in the shadow of deep canyon walls. But the text doesn't stop there. What follows in chapter 18 is the entrance itself. Verse 9 says, "Enoch was shown a deep place in the earth where columns of fire descended without end." Columns of fire descending without end. That is a description of hydrothermal activity. Superheated gases rising through fissures in the rock, visible as flame or heat shimmer. The Dead Sea region is geothermally active. The Ein Gedi hot springs on the western shore have been documented since antiquity. The Jordanian side of the Dead Sea contains sulfur vents that produce flames visible at the surface. Enoch describes them from below, looking up through the fissure, seeing fire descending from above. He is describing the same phenomenon from the inside. What follows in verse 11 is stranger still. Enoch writes, "Beyond the columns of fire, I saw a great house built of stones of hail and surrounded by walls of fire, and its door I could not open." A structure, built, not formed by nature, built, of stones described as hail, a term that in Ge'ez and Aramaic both carries the secondary meaning of compressed ice or crystalline mineral. The geological formation at Bab ed-Dudra, a site 17 miles southwest of the Dead Sea, contains a circular depression 400 meters in diameter, surrounded by 7 raised formations of volcanic basalt. At the center sits a vertical shaft descending more than 400 meters before the cave system angles into unmapped passages. The walls of the depression contain crystalline selenite formations, white, translucent, mineral structures that ancient observers would have described as stones of hail or compressed ice. Enoch describes them from outside the entrance, crystalline walls surrounded by heat with a door that cannot be opened from the outside. The phrase "cannot be opened from the outside" is not spiritual language, it is architectural language. It describes a one-way door. The geological case for Babada as Enoch's entrance point goes deeper than the physical description. Chapter 18 verse 14 adds a detail that the standard Western translations render as a place of no return. The Ge'ez uses Mahaleka I Bello, literally a path without an exit. The same phrase appears in ancient Mesopotamian texts to describe cave systems where the air becomes unbreathable at depth, where the CO2 concentration increases until a person cannot survive. Ancient peoples who entered deep cave systems in this region and did not return were described as having gone to the place of no return. The phrase is not supernatural, it is experiential. People entered, people did not come back. The survivors recorded what they knew. It is a path without an exit. Enoch describes it as sealed, closed, guarded. He describes the air as different inside. The Ge'ez uses a phrase that translates as, "The breath does not move there, still air." The kind of still air that accumulates in sealed underground spaces where ventilation is absent and CO2 builds to lethal concentrations over time. This is not poetry. This is a description of the atmospheric conditions inside a sealed underground chamber. Chapter 21, verse 3 adds the dimension of sound. Enoch writes that he heard sounds from inside the structure before he reached the entrance. A voice as of many waters, deep and continuous. A continuous deep sound rising from below. Geothermal vents in active geological rifts produce exactly this. Low-frequency vibration transmitted through rock, heard as a deep hum or roar before the vent itself is visible. The Dead Sea Rift is geologically active. The basalt formations on both sides of the valley conduct sound through the rock with unusual efficiency due to the density of the volcanic material. What Enoch heard before he saw the entrance is what a person standing above a deep geothermal vent hears today. A continuous low sound rising through solid stone. And then comes the part that should stop the conversation. Chapter 20 names the being stationed at the entrance. Uriel. The archangel Uriel is described in verse 2 as the angel set over the world and Tartarus. Tartarus is the term the Ge'ez translation uses for the subterranean prison. Uriel is not visiting. He is set over it, stationed. The Ge'ez uses the same verb used elsewhere in Enoch to describe angels permanently assigned to specific posts. The same construction used for the angels assigned to manage the moon's orbit and the angels managing the sun's path. Uriel is posted at this location the way a guard is posted at a gate, and Enoch, when he reaches the entrance, cannot open the door because Uriel is on the other side of it. Here's what the translators left out. The standard English version of Enoch chapter 18, based on R.H. Charles' 1906 translation, renders verse 11 as a dark place. 2 words. The Ge'ez manuscript at Aksum contains a full architectural description that Charles condensed into 2 words. Dr. Ephraim Isaac, who translated the Ethiopian text for Oxford in 1983, included the full passage but marked it with a footnote describing it as geographically specific in ways inconsistent with allegorical literature. The full text describes the structure as having 4 sides, a visible threshold, and markings above the door that the Ge'ez renders as warnings not to enter. Warnings, not decorations, warnings. The full passage was not included in Charles' edition. It appears only in the Ge'ez text and in fragment 4Q206. What modern readers don't realize is what the surveys found at Bab ed-Dura. In 2003, a ground-penetrating radar team from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem conducted a geological mapping survey of the Jordan Valley. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses into the earth and maps what bounces back like sonar for solid ground. The survey covered the Bab ed-Dura formation. It detected a large subsurface void directly beneath the central shaft, extending at least 600 meters below the surface before the radar return signal degraded. The void's upper boundary showed geometric regularity. The radar return pattern indicated flat surfaces and right angles rather than the irregular surfaces of a natural cave. The findings were published in the journal Geomorphology in 2004. The lead researcher, Dr. Ayetha Amos Frumkin, described the void as a significant subsurface anomaly of unknown origin and noted its geometry was inconsistent with typical karst formation patterns. Karst formations, the natural cave systems that form when water dissolves limestone, do not produce right angles. Nature does not make right angles underground. Enoch wrote this around 2000 BCE. In 2011, a second survey of the same area, this time using seismic reflection technology, a method that maps underground structures by measuring how sound waves bounce off subsurface boundaries, detected the same void and added new information. The void contains at least 3 distinct internal boundaries at different depths, suggesting multiple chambers rather than a single open space. The study, conducted by a joint team from the German Archaeological Institute and the Jordanian Department of Antiquities, was published in the Journal of Archaeological Science in 2012. The lead author described the subsurface structure as suggesting deliberate excavation or construction at a depth exceeding current archaeological investigation capability. Deliberate excavation or construction at 600 meters below the surface, in a region Enoch identifies by name as the location of the entrance to the underground prison of the fallen angels. The suppression of this identification begins at the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE. Church leaders removed Enoch from the biblical canon. Canon 60 of the Council specifically prohibits texts that describe the physical locations of the prisons of condemned spirits. The Church taught that the places of spiritual punishment exist outside creation, not inside a geological formation that a geologist could survey. Enoch made the opposite claim. He named a specific place, a specific direction, a specific terrain feature that made the text testable. And testable claims are dangerous to doctrine. The suppression also runs through a specific scholar whose silence is as revealing as the silence of the texts themselves. In 1992, Israeli geologist Dr. Eldad Netzer submitted a paper to the Israel Exploration Journal describing geological anomalies in the southern Jordan Valley consistent with a preformed subterranean void of non-natural origin. The paper referenced the Bab ed-Dura formation specifically. The journal accepted the paper for review. The review process took 18 months. At the end of that period, the journal informed Netzer that the paper could not be published due to the sensitivity of the claims relative to the site's protected status under Jordanian jurisdiction. Netzer appealed. The appeal was declined. He submitted a revised version to a German geology journal in 1995. That submission was accepted, scheduled for publication, and then withdrawn at the galley-proof stage. The withdrawal notice cited concerns about the political implications of the findings for cross-border archaeological jurisdiction. Netzer died in 2010. His paper has never been published. His research materials were donated to the Hebrew University Library. Access to those materials requires written approval from the university's archaeology department. Requests have been pending since 2011. Jerome, compiling the Latin Vulgate around 400 CE, dismissed Enoch in his preface as containing fantastic claims about places of punishment accessible to human observation. He did not say the claims were false. He said they were accessible to observation. That was the problem. Augustine, in The City of God, argued that the prison of the fallen angels exists beyond the boundaries of creation, inaccessible to any human sense or measurement. Enoch said the opposite. The Ethiopian church, outside Rome's jurisdiction, kept Enoch in its canon. When James Bruce brought 3 Ge'ez manuscripts to Europe in 1773, Oxford scholars who examined the location chapters called the geographical specificity an embarrassment to the text's theological credibility. R.H. Charles, in 1906, condensed the architectural description to 2 words. But what the standard translation hides is this. In 1952, a British archaeological team excavating the Bab Edra site discovered a sealed chamber 30 feet beneath the surface. Inside were 12 bodies coated in bitumen, the same black tar used in ancient times to waterproof boats and preserve materials indefinitely. The bodies showed no decomposition after 3,000 years. Archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon documented the find in her field notes, archived at the Institute of Archaeology in London, and labeled the chamber Jericho Tomb J12. She mentioned it briefly in her 1954 report and never referenced it again. Access to the site was restricted by the Jordanian government in 1967 following the Six-Day War. In 2008, a private collector in London acquired a photograph of the chamber interior at an estate sale. The photograph was posted on an antiquities forum. Within 72 hours, the thread was removed. The collector was visited by 2 individuals claiming to represent the Jordanian government. He surrendered the photograph. It has not been seen publicly since. Now, let me be clear, I am not saying the entrance to a supernatural underworld is sitting in a limestone formation in the Jordanian wilderness waiting to be opened. The Book of Enoch is not a geological survey report. What Enoch describes may be a record of something encountered and interpreted through the theological framework available to a writer in 2000 BCE. But what the text describes, when read carefully using the actual Ge'ez vocabulary rather than Charles' condensed English version, matches a real geological formation with a precision that should not be possible for a writer without modern surveying equipment. The compass direction is correct. The terrain description is accurate. The geological features match. The subsurface void exists. The geometry of that void is inconsistent with natural formation, and the site has been restricted from outside investigation for 57 years. Whether Enoch was describing a supernatural prison or a natural formation so unusual it became one, the location he identifies is real. The formation is still there. The void beneath it has never been entered. And the door Enoch describes, the one that cannot be opened from the outside, is still closed.